The purpose of this mini lecture is to introduce you to plant scientific names. I want you to just pay attention to the detail after the lecture. I'm going to have you go to my website, copy and paste some review material to put in your Microsoft Word notes. Why would we want to learn about plant scientific names? Well, take a look at these three white flowers rather. Three plants with white flowers. If you really look closely, you're going to see some differences in the white flowers. However, in common everyday language, the common name for these plants is all moonflower. But you can see if somebody said moonflower, they might be talking about different plants, not necessarily the exact same plant. What if you went to buy a moonflower and you said, I'd like to buy a moonflower and it wasn't blooming? Which one do you think you might get when it does bloom? So scientific names clear up the confusion. Here's another example. This yellow flower I had this yellow flower, this plant with the yellow flower blooming in my front yard. A neighbor had a relative from the East Coast visiting. She walks over to me in my yard and says, I love your moonflower. And I looked at her, and for a minute I was very confused. I had never heard of my yellow flowering plant called a moonflower. As it turns out, on the East Coast, they commonly call these moonflowers. To me, the common name was an angel trumpet. So again, an example of the confusion that happens with just using common names. Let's take a look at my yellow flowering plant. The scientific name for it is Brugmansia aurea, and we say that a scientific name is binomial. Bi means two. So there's two parts, the genus and species. You might have run across the two-part names in biology when you were learning about animals or other organisms. The first part is called the genus name. Let's take a look at Brugmansia, the genus name. We always capitalize the first letter of the genus name, and the rest is in lowercase. The genus name should be written in italics or underlined. So you see the two ways of writing Brugmansia properly at the bottom of the slide. The species name is the second one. The species name should all be in lowercase. And again, it should be in italics or underlined. The species name may be kind of odd because often it originates with some Latin language or meaning. In Latin, aurea means golden. So you can see that if you know Latin, aurea really describes the flowers of the plant. Finally, we can abbreviate the genus name. So let's say that I'm reading about Brugmansia and the author doesn't want to spell out Brugmansia over and over, so they would abbreviate it with a B, capital B and period, and then put the species name. There may be an optional third name, the cultivar name. Take a look at these pictures. The first picture on the top is a very native plant to the prairie where we live, Echinacea purpurea, the original coneflower that existed on the prairie before people were living in Iowa. What they've done is they have hybridized that or made cultivars. That would mean, going back to your biology knowledge, taking pollen from one plant and cross-pollinating it with another plant to create a new type of plant. The bottom plant is a newer hybrid called Echinacea purpurea, and then in single quotes you have white swan. You can see why that's referred to as white swan, white petals. So to review, you've got a picture of a plant on the screen. You've got three names. Which name is the species name? That would be tuberosa. Hopefully you recognize that. Why is Asclepias capitalized? Again, the answer to that is because it's the genus name. And finally, what would we call hello yellow in single quotes? That would be the cultivar. Notice, again, the whole thing is in italics. What would be another way to write the entire name? And that would be underline the whole thing and not have italics. So that's a quick little lesson on plant scientific names.